In this video, I'm going to take you on my recovery bike ride, and I'm going to answer some of the comments, at least reply to some of the comments that have been made over the years through videos on retention reloads, why people don't believe in them, or whatever. So some of the comments people have made about retaining mags is, the first one came from Max at Max Velocity Tactical in one of his videos. He said, in here you retain if you can, because yes, you do want to keep those magazines, but you don't want to chase the magazines, and you don't want to make it so desperate to retain magazines that you start inhibiting your ability to function with the weapon, i.e. carrying a empty magazine while you're handling the support or the handguard of the rifle. So that makes sense. Or halting maneuvers just because you're trying to pick up magazines before you even move. Absolutely, I understand that, but that sounds like a training issue and a gear misplacement issue and a mismanagement issue. So here's my response to that. I get that you have had students who don't understand the concept of intuitive pouch placement, but that doesn't mean that the concept of retaining mags just needs to be shit canned because of a lot of flat range work and a lot of this range work that is happening. Maybe counseling them on intuitive pouch placement and not chasing after mags or whatever. If they want to retain mags, maybe they should incorporate it into their combat reload. And if they drop a mag, let it go. If it touches a deck, let it go. If you don't have a dump pouch, that's going to be your problem. You're not seeing those mags again. I'm not saying like in training tell people they can't go get their mags. I'm just saying like that's just something they would have to think about. So that would be my response to that. So the next comment is, on the range, it makes sense to have a dump pouch because you can put all this stuff in it, but in combat it makes no sense. That sounds like the opposite, right? Because in combat, you don't always get to go and police up your mags. I get in like a CQB environment, you have to clear back and stuff like that. You might run into your mags or whatever. But even in CQB, unless you have so much manpower that you don't have to clear back, you're clearing back, which means you're not like, oh, cover me, I'm going to step into this doorway to go get my mag. That ain't how it's working. You are flowing. So with that said, an assault through or whatever it may be, break contact or whatever, if you get to your consolidation point, I don't know of many units that say, hey, if you dropped anything out in the field, go pick it up. No, you have support elements that are going to help you, but you also got to be aware of counterattacks. You got to occupy the position, improve your position of cover and the occupation of that site. Or you got to move out because the QRF is on their way. So the idea that you're going to be able to retain it in combat just because you're going to be able to run back through it, that sounds like a lot of flat range nonsense to me, because that is totally opposite of my experiences. I've lost stuff in combat because it was back 200 yards that way, but we got a mission to complete, and we're not just stopping at that compound. We have a city to clear. So I didn't see a lot of that stuff ever again. So the next comment is that it takes too long. Well, it's more of an implication that it takes too long to do a retention reload. Absolutely. If you've misplaced the pouch, i.e. put it on your butt like you're some kind of range instructor and you think that's where your dump pouches go, not in an intuitive spot where all your extra ammo is, totally understand that. It's ridiculous. Or you got the wrong pouch. You got this tiny pouch that only carries like 2 mags, but you carry like 8 of them, and you're part of a automatic rifleman group that can actually like touch off rounds really fast. You're going to be going through mags. So you're probably carrying more than 8 anyways, but whatever. The point is mismanagement of pouches in general. The acquisition of the wrong pouch and also misplacing the pouch in a non-intuitive area. It's kind of like taking all your reloads and putting them behind you or whatever. It just doesn't make sense. So anyways, or how about the idea that it takes too long because now you have to like put them in pockets because you don't have a dump pouch or shove them down your shirt. Yeah, but we're beyond that. We have these things called dump pouches that can be, pretty good size, like my Condor ones, and not the simple pull down ones or whatever, but They're rigid, they have an open mouth. They're really easy to get your empties in because they're permanently open, like that wide. So you can easily just shove your magazine in and drop it in. So there's really not much of a reason for that. So the next argument that I have against that is you're in a team. Your team can and should cover you. And, your team should be capable of providing some cover, but you should also be trained to do these actions. You should be able to conduct reloads and retain your magazines fluidly through all different positions. If you're not capable of doing it and your excuse is, well, it's just faster to drop a magazine on the ground, then you haven't been training. Because my retention reloads do not slow me down. And like I said in the last video, I've been through the school of thought that, I can just dump my mags on the ground. It just takes too long to retain them. Well, in actual testing, there's like no time difference. And not enough to make a difference. Let's just put it that way. It's literally just a few seconds that it takes to go through the entire combat reload process. So, also having a team covering you, that time's going to be, it's going to be minuscule in difference for somebody who is actually training properly with intuitive placement of pouches, and they're actually incorporating into their reload. So, also, they should be to the point where you're not staring at where your dump pouch is. You shouldn't here's how you know you've actually trained it to a good level, where you can identify it's a combat reload if you're going to go through the proper process. Usually you just feel the clunk and at least for people who are experienced, but you identify that as a combat reload. You just go through your process. You know exactly where it's at. You can do it with your eyes closed. You know exactly where all your ammo is. This means that your eyes are used to check up on your team. Because like I said, small unit tactics means movement. You don't always have the luxury of time. You're maneuvering. And if you're doing buddy rushes or a break contact drill and you need to actually reload, you're probably having to reload on the move, most likely. And that means you need to keep the momentum. But during the reload, this is a really good time for you to take a breath for those few seconds and check your team. Is anybody a casualty? Is anybody trying to say anything to anybody? Are they trying to give target descriptions, talk about people flanking, anything like that? It's not like the movies where you can have a perfect conversation when people are booming right next to you. It's not like that. It's not that easy. Even with electronic hearing protection, it is not that easy, especially when people are 5 to 7 meters apart. So, and you got people moving around all the time. So, you got to keep that into account. So the last comment is that I've heard this from several people in person and on videos. Magazines are disposable items. So is everything else I wear. So is my house. In relation to life, it is a disposable item. I don't understand trying to use this argument to justify dumping mags on the ground and not even trying to incorporate a dump pouch into your training. You don't really lose anything by doing that, but you gain something. You get to keep those magazines for later usage if you plan to survive that long. If you don't plan to survive that long, then whatever. Your life is disposable too. So it's just I guess it's missing so much context that people are just blabbing on the internet, and they're not applying context, and therefore they're applying generalization to this retention reload thing. Now, when I practice my concealed carry reloads, my home defense stuff, if there is a reload, I'm not trying to retain magazines. If I'm practicing CQB with a rifle, I'm not retaining magazines. I get it. But in rural combat, and you come back from that, you might not have a place to go back to. You might just find ammo or have ammo stashed somewhere. You might get lucky and have some magazines, but I would say that it is more economic in space to have an ammo can of just ammo. It is more economic for people to buy ammo than it is to buy magazines and ammo. So people that say, well, I can always replace those magazines, where are you going to get the time to do a battlefield pickup? You're really relying on the luxury of having that kind of time on the X, as it's called. I can tell you this much. If it gets that bad to where you're able to actually test a lot of these theories, I don't think you're going to live long enough to do a battlefield pickup. Because you're going to be like, well, I dumped all those magazines out, I need to take their ammo too. Okay, it just sounds like there was a lot of lack of forethought on this. How about harassing ambushes? You hit hard and you leave. Are you scrambling at night to try to find those magazines that you dropped on the deck, or should they be part of your reload? There's these considerations that are actually universal in principle. If I'm doing CQB from house to house to house to house, guess what? I am retaining my mags. Now, before I move on to the next house, and we're getting ready, and you're probably going to want to cross-load out and bump magazines up, replace the hard-to-reach areas with empties, stuff like that, so that you're not jingle-jangling around. But I'm not going to dump magazines and leave them there just because they might jangle later if I don't, bump them up. That just makes no sense. So I'm failing to see where a lot of these people are getting these ideas. It just sounds like they have either very little to any tactical experience, or they're just talking about civilian-based stuff, and they're not even considering, the concepts of like what's going on in Ukraine right now, or even Israel. So where they're having to go after Hamas. I don't see where magazines are entirely disposable. In an emergency situation, yeah, magazine's not worth your life, blah, 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 blah. I get it. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about magazines being considered disposable overall, to the point where you don't care if you retain them or not. But that gets very expensive. So if you want a sample of that, go ahead and start doing it now. But just remember, if you actually have to start using your weapon like that, where you're actually going through mag after mag after mag, you're not policing those things up. And you're not going to have a place to buy more. You're going to have to rely on your stash that you have right now, or whenever it happens. So just keep that in mind. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it doesn't hurt too many feelings. I'm not trying to call anybody out specifically. I just wanted to talk about some of the things I've seen people say or imply. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below.